Good evening, Dr. Kearney. Thank you so much for joining us for this interview. We're delighted to be able to have you here.
Good evening, Marie. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you much. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Your story has made headlines, not only in Ireland and the UK, but across the world this weekend. What happened was the General Medical Council in the UK dropped the case against you for providing an abortion pill reversal treatment service. And it has been huge news for the pro-life movement and for yourself. And it's been described by the Life Institute in Ireland as a huge pro-life victory. So the story is that you were providing a treatment and it's called abortion pill reversal. And essentially what that is it's using the hormone progesterone for a woman who's taken the first of two abortion pills and experiences regret at that decision. You were providing a service to those women. You were able to see a demand, and the General Medical Council in the UK, of course, brought accusations against you, said that this treatment was unsafe, among other things. And of course, now all of those sanctions have been lifted. You fought back, you challenged that decision. And it's a huge, I think, landmark case for abortion pill reversal, for that treatment, and in terms of the safety, the effectiveness of abortion pill reversal. It's a huge case because, of course, they found no evidence. There was not enough evidence to bring anything against you, and the case was dropped. So would you be able to tell us a bit of background on the case? What is abortion pill reversal?
Yeah, as you correctly say, some women, not all, but some women do change their mind after they've taken the first abortion pill when they're undergoing a medical abortion. Certainly in the UK, the vast majority of abortions nowadays are performed by medical means. That's using two drugs. First of all, they take mifepristone, which interferes with the development of the lining of the womb, a process called decidualization. So it causes necrosis or death of the cells. And then that results in separation of the placenta, or the developing placenta, from the inner part of the womb. And the second drug, which they take 1 or 2 days later, as directed by the abortion providers, called misoprostol, causes uterine contraction of the womb to expel the developing embryo or fetus, depending on what stage of development, and the other products of conception. In most cases, the baby will already have been killed by the effect of the first drug, mifepristone, but not always. Any of the women who came to me, it's important that we explain to them exactly what happens when they take these drugs and what the effect of the progesterone that we're trying to use to try and save their baby. So when they take mifepristone, as I mentioned it, most of the babies will actually be damaged or destroyed or killed by that first drug, but some will still survive. If a woman takes both abortion pills, both the mifepristone and the misoprostol, there's a 98 to 99% chance that the baby will not survive. The developing child will not survive. Not all of the abortions will be complete, mind you. There's a 6 to 7% chance that even if the baby is killed, that there will be some retained products that then have to be removed surgically at a later stage, and sometimes on an emergency basis. So this treatment is not entirely safe. If the mother takes mifepristone to end the pregnancy, but if she doesn't follow up with the misoprostol, she takes the first drug but not the second drug, but if she doesn't receive the rescue treatment with progesterone that we were offering, there's a 20 to 25% chance that the baby might survive. So that's better than if she takes both drugs, but still not as good as we'd like it to be if a woman has regret and changes her mind. And we have found, and our colleagues in the US in particular have found, that if we give progesterone promptly at that stage, so after the first pill has been taken, but not the second medications, we can improve the survival rate of the child from that 20-25% up to 50 to 55% in the UK. The US have even better figures, more impressive figures of 65 to 70% survival rate. That's largely explained by how quickly they can get this treatment to women in America. There's a greater awareness of it. Some states even mandate that women must be informed about this reversal treatment if they're undergoing medical abortion, whereas that doesn't happen in the UK. So the average time for a woman in most US states where abortion pill reversal is available, so available widely, the average time from taking the first abortion pill to receiving progesterone starting treatment is less than 6 hours. In the UK, it's 24 to 25 hours. largely because it's unknown, it's widely or not widely available, and very few doctors were prepared to prescribe it. I should have mentioned that the reason we use progesterone, it's an important factor to be aware of, is that mifepristone, the first abortion pill, is a specific progesterone receptor antagonist. So it blocks the action of the natural hormone progesterone. Progesterone is produced in pregnancy and is essential to maintain pregnancy throughout. So in the early stages, if there's not enough progesterone being produced, as can happen in spontaneous miscarriages sometimes, or if the effect of progesterone is blocked by this mifepristone abortion drug or U486, that very often will result in the death of the baby and induce a miscarriage, an intended miscarriage in this situation. So by giving high dose progesterone early on, we sometimes can overcome or prevent the ongoing effect of this lethal medication.
And Dr. Kearney, how are you feeling? This was a huge case. It's been described as tremendous news for yourself, for the pro-life movement. The Life Institute in Ireland have welcomed the decision. It's huge news, and I think a breakthrough case. And of course, you've had a very difficult few months because of your treatment from the General Medical Council in the UK, who brought this case against you, who suspended you from providing this service because of accusations from the abortion provider Mary Stopes International. So how has this news made you feel? I'm sure you're very relieved, but of course it's been a very difficult time for you as well.
Yeah, relief, overjoyed or joyful. Mm-hmm. It's surprisingly, it wasn't. You mentioned about the stressful time. It wasn't actually, for me personally, it wasn't as stressful as it might have been, or as people might imagine it should have been. And I can only put that down to, well, two things. One is the amount of support and particularly prayer that we received from all over the world. From the Southern Hemisphere, the Northern Hemisphere, East and West. We had so much support, myself and Dr. Eileen Riley, that I'm sure helped in some way to take some of the burden off us. And secondly, maybe just as importantly, we knew that what we had done was not wrong. We knew that what we had done was right, that justice was on our side, if there was any justice. So if we had done something terrible or wrong, then yes, that would have been difficult to come to terms with, to live with. The fact that we knew that what we had done was something good, something that women were calling for, women in desperate distress. And also these mothers had already gone to several other people before they found us. So and almost in all cases, the first port of call was to go back to the abortion providers, whether it was MSI or BPAS or some other clinic, to say, I've changed my mind, I want to save my baby. And they were always told, nothing you can do. And in fact, in several cases, they were told, the baby's already dead, it's too late, that's certainly misleading information and downright lie in many cases. Then some of them would be told, oh, you have to go back to your own family doctor, your GP. And they, especially in COVID situations, it wasn't always possible for them to see a GP, but they could try a phone call consultation or maybe see a GP. But again, almost always they were told, sorry, this has nothing to do with me, you have to go back to the abortion provider. And then, knowing that they were getting no joy there, they would go sometimes to casualty or to walk-in centres where they feel they might get some healthcare professional who would have some sympathy and at least listen to their cry for help. But again, they were always told, sorry, nothing we can do, it's too late. Then I think every case that I'm aware of that came to us, either myself or Dr. Riley, came through an internet search. So they go on the internet, having found no help anywhere else, and they would type in abortion reversal or words to that effect, and they would usually find an American helpline run by Heartbeat International, who are very experienced in dealing with women in this situation. Well over 3,000 babies have been saved in the US alone, and they help women from all over the world if they can find willing doctors in whatever country the mother is phoning from. So they would phone the Heartbeat International, speak to an experienced nurse, a sympathetic nurse, who would then just look to see if there's any doctor in that woman's area that might be able to help. And then they would send a message through to myself or Eileen. But the important thing is that these women, we were the last port of call. They'd already tried several areas where they thought they might have obtained some help were turned away at every post until they found us.
And would you tell us, obviously, you explained a good bit there about abortion pill reversal, what it is. A lot of people are not aware, as you say, women are not aware that this is a service that exists, that it is possible that if you are experiencing that regret after taking the first of 2 abortion pills, there is a way to save your baby. There is a chance that you can increase the risk of survival. Would you speak a bit more specifically on, there have been obviously accusations in the press here in Ireland. There was a lot of there were a few media reports, a lot of different reporting that the abortion pill reversal is dangerous, that it's a threat to women. There were pro-life ads from different organisations that came under scrutiny, that were pulled because they were, it was claimed that they were promoting a dangerous service. So specifically, would you talk about the safety for mother and for baby, of course, with the abortion pill reversal? Because it's quite clear that if they were able to find, if the General Medical Council were able to find any evidence that this was dangerous, you would have been struck off. You would, as a doctor. So I think that element of it is hugely significant, the safety of this treatment.
Yeah, it's very, very important. I'm glad you brought that up. Even before we go into the danger element, this is the typical sort of ploy by the abortion industry. So first of all, there's great resistance to abortion pill reversal only from the abortion industry, particularly coming from the United States and then spreading to other countries. First of all, there was never mention of any danger. The initial complaints that they had, and there are a number of very outspoken abortionists who are very strongly against abortion pill reversal. So when abortion pill reversal was becoming more and more available in the United States, the initial complaint was, "Oh, this isn't necessary. Women don't change their mind." That was the first line of defense that they had. And when they saw that wasn't working, they had to come up with another lie. So it's one lie after another. So first of all, women don't change their mind. Then the next one was, "Oh, this doesn't work. This is ineffective. It doesn't work. There's no evidence it works." And now, when they realize actually it does work, because we're getting more and more live babies coming through, and the evidence is growing day by day and week by week. So the new line, or the most recent one, has been, "Oh, this is dangerous." So if one lie doesn't work, they have to find another lie. And that's just been typical sort of way that the abortion providers. The reason that they say it's dangerous is based entirely on one, I hesitate to call it a study, but an attempt at a study. First of all, it was arranged or designed by one of the most outspoken critics against APR, abortion reversal, called Mitchellcrine, and he's a gynecologist, obstetrician abortionist working in Sacramento in Northern California. And he has many times has said, "This doesn't work," and eventually he started to say, "I'm going to design a study to prove this doesn't work." Now, a true scientist, a true researcher doesn't go in designing a study to prove something. It's you go in with an open question. I wonder if this works. I wonder if this doesn't work. And you have an open question and you design a valid study and you try to answer that question from the findings. But he was determined he was going to show that this didn't work. So somehow or other, he got ethical permission. He managed to persuade some statistician that he would only need to have 40 subjects, 40 patients. And now most people who have any knowledge about how medicine and research and science works knows that you can prove very, very little with just 40 subjects, particularly when there are so many variables that need to be taken into account. The reason that you do what they call a randomized study is to try and make sure that there's no bias involved in whatever the outcome is going to be. So if you're comparing, for example, one treatment against another, as he was doing in this case, you're going to need at least several hundred, if not several thousand patients or subjects to prove one way or another, does this work? Is it safe? Or otherwise, is it not safe? Does it not work?
Yes.
So he decided 40 patients would be enough. Not taking into account that most studies will have a dropout rate. So if you get 40 people in a study, you're going to get at least 10% are going to drop out. And if something as controversial as abortion, that's probably going to be even much higher. So you're going to end up with probably less than 30 subjects at the end of your study if you only start with 40. He chose women who were going to have an abortion anyway. So they were all scheduled to have a surgical abortion, because in America, up until very recently, the majority of abortions being carried out were still surgical abortions, either evacuation using a vacuum device or dismemberment abortions. Whereas the medical abortions were still a minority until very recently. It's just gone over 50% recently. Whereas in this country, it's 85% are medical abortions. In Ireland, I imagine it's even higher than that. So he persuaded women who were scheduled to have an elective surgical abortion to delay it by 2 weeks, by 15 days. And in that time, he would put them through this medical abortion procedure with or without progesterone to see did progesterone interfere with the medical abortion. So they all received mifepristone on the first day. And on day 2, 24 hours later, they were given either progesterone, exactly the same dose as we prescribe when we're given abortion for reversal. They were given oral progesterone, or they were given placebo, and the tablets looked the same. So the mother couldn't tell necessarily, which they were receiving. Was it placebo or was it progesterone? And then they would follow them up over the 15-day period. They would do scans on them, they would do blood tests measuring progesterone levels, and they would look at the outcomes. They divided, as I said, 40 patients into 2 groups. So 20 were to receive progesterone, 20 were to receive placebo after the initial mifepristone. As it turned out, 12 women were recruited. They stopped the study early. In their paper, they say the reason they stopped the study was that too many women were having bleeding. I can tell you straight off, any woman who takes mifepristone, certainly in the first trimester of pregnancy, and all of these women were under 9 weeks, I think, they were between 6 and 9 weeks. Any woman who takes mifepristone is very, very likely to bleed. Sometimes it'll be mild bleeding, spotting, light bleeding. Sometimes it'll be very, very heavy bleeding. Sometimes the abortion will be complete just with mifepristone alone. So almost every mother who's pregnant who takes mifepristone will have some bleeding, quite early on. So they stopped it on the premise that 3 women who had bleeding serious enough that they had to attend their local emergency rooms, ERs or emergency services. Of the 3 women who bled, 2 of them were in the placebo group, so they didn't receive progesterone. 1 woman was in the progesterone group. The woman in the progesterone group had a mild bleed. Her blood count did not drop. She didn't require a blood transfusion. She didn't require any resuscitation whatsoever. She was assessed and sent home without any additional intervention. The 2 women who bled in the placebo group, so they received mifepristone but didn't receive progesterone. One of them required a blood transfusion because she had a significant drop in her blood count and her hemoglobin, and the other one subsequently required an urgent surgical evacuation of her pregnancy. It's also pointed out that 2 women, 1 in each arm, 1 in the placebo group, 1 in the progesterone group, had pulled out voluntarily within a few days of starting the study. So that's part of the dropout rate. So they were left with 10 women, 5 in each group, 2 of whom had bleeding in the placebo group, 1 in the progesterone group, which wasn't a serious bleed. Then when they looked at 15 days, 4 out of 5 women in the progesterone group were still pregnant. 2 out of 5 were still pregnant. Now, 15 days is too soon because some women will still miscarry beyond the 15-day period. But at 15 days, 4 out of 5 were still pregnant in the progesterone group. 2 out of 5 were pregnant in the placebo group. So 3 babies were lost in the placebo group, 1 in the progesterone group. I suspect, I can't prove it, but I suspect that Mitchellcrine and his co-investigators looked at these preliminary results and said, this is not going the way we planned. Babies are surviving, bleeding is less. This is exactly the opposite of what we wanted to show. So they had to come up with some ploy or some plan to discontinue the study as soon as they could. So they said, women are bleeding, we have to stop this. It was pretty pathetic now. So you can't really put any value on that study. But if you were to look at it on face value and said, well, it's 10 patients, let's see, the outcome were that progesterone doubled the survival rate of the babies, and it halved the risk of serious bleeding. So if anything, that study, flawed and all as it is, sort of backs up entirely what defenders of APR have been saying all along, that we can double the survival rate. So normally we would say we can improve the survival rate from 20-25% up to 50-55%. So that study more or less confirmed what we've been saying all along. We didn't say anything about serious hemorrhage because we know that women bleed whether they've taken mifepristone or whether they've taken the second abortion pill as well. In the UK alone, a Freedom of Information study shows that almost 500 women per month, every month, will have to attend emergency services because of some complication, having taken the abortion pills, usually both abortion pills. Now, the majority of those will be retained products, that the incomplete abortion that subsequently made. But some will be because of severe hemorrhage requiring transfusions, and some will be because of severe infection that could be life-threatening. And unfortunately, we know of at least one woman recently who has died in the UK following an incomplete medical abortion. So to say that what we were offering with abortion pill reversal is unsafe is just not true. What's unsafe is the early medical abortion in the first place. So that's unsafe because mifepristone is a dangerous drug. Misoprostol is probably not as dangerous. That the main danger seems to come from the first drug, but overall there is dangers associated with both abortion pills. Whereas progesterone has been around for 50 years. Even the expert witnesses, both on our side and on the GMC side, both agree that progesterone is safe, that they've no problem actually. In fact, the expert witness on the GMC side more or less said that there is a reasonable evidence base to support APR. He wasn't concerned about any safety issues. He wasn't concerned about lack of efficacy, and that was the witness that they got on their side to try to prove that we were doing something that could be called professional misconduct. So to say that it's unsafe is untrue. To say that it's not effective is untrue. To say that women don't change their mind is untrue. So one by one, we've combated each of the lies that the abortion industry have tried to portray to prevent women having a true choice and the opportunity to change their mind when they wish to do so.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Dermot. You've explained that extremely well, and I think it's important for people to really know the truth around this issue, and that women know that there is an option, that there are choices, that there is a way that if they face this abortion regret and they want a better choice for themselves, for their baby, that it is safe, that it is an effective treatment for mother and baby. And I think it's great that you're highlighting that for women. So Dermot, why did you begin offering abortion pill reversal? You are a consultant cardiologist and you've worked in that area. You've had a career of over 30 years. And I think a lot of people who maybe heard of the case would think you're in that area, you could have a more comfortable life, an easier life, I suppose, not highlighting abortion pill reversal. Obviously, as we have seen, it has attracted huge criticism and attention from abortion advocates, from supporters of abortion, and from people who are very powerful advocates of abortion. So would you tell us a bit about why you started offering this treatment for women?
Well, in one sentence, it's because it was an unmet need that women wanted. So that's the bottom line. But it began when I'm a member of the Catholic Medical Association. I was a member of the Council of the Catholic Medical Association in the UK since 2010. And in 2014, we were approached by one of the pro-life organisations, Life actually, their founder, Jack Scarisbrick, came to one of our meetings to say, as you know, medical abortion is becoming more available in this country, and sometimes women change their mind. And we are already experiencing women coming to us who've taken the first abortion pill, and they're changing their mind. They want to try to save their baby. I've heard reports from the US that there is a program over there called abortion pill reversal. They use progesterone treatment. Could you look into this and maybe develop it in this country? That was 2014. And I have to say, we were all very skeptical. We looked at each other and wondered how we're going to deal with this, because none of us knew anything about it. I'd never heard of progesterone being used in this context. It was relatively new even in the United States, even though the first cases had been done almost by accident in 2007, 2008. And the actual full program became established around 2012. So they'd only been doing it about 2 years at that stage. And they probably had maybe a couple of hundred success stories at that point. So it was very little was known about it. There were a couple of minor papers or small papers suggesting that this might be something that could become mainstream or on board. But we decided we'd look into it. There wasn't a lot of information available at that time. I saw one or two interviews with Dr. George Delgado from San Diego, and he seemed very convinced and he seemed very committed and convinced by the efficacy and the safety of it. So we decided we'd keep going. But again, still, there wasn't a lot of information until 2018 at another Catholic Medical Association event. Claire McCulloch, a great lady from Good Counsel Network, came to us basically with a plea this time. Jack Scarisbrick came with us came to us, giving us some information, asking could we look into it. Claire came with a plea because more and more women were coming to them seeking help, having changed their mind. Now, Claire had tried to help these women. All she knew that she could do was to go to some private physicians in Harley Street who charged a fortune sometimes for their services. And in some cases, we don't know what the outcomes were, but in some cases, she did manage to obtain some sort of abortion pill reversal treatment through these private clinics, but she had to pay huge fees for them on behalf of the women. So she was wondering if a group like the Catholic Medical Association, who she presumed would have been maybe pro-life in its outlook, would try to help in this way. So once again, I was elected president at that weekend when Claire came to our meeting, and I promised her that I would look into this in more detail and we would try to do whatever we could if it was possible. We were concerned, though, that there was was it effective? Could it work, or was it too late if a woman has already taken the first abortion pill? We were particularly concerned about safety, not so much for the mother, because we knew progesterone was safe, but we're wondering about, is it safe for the baby? If the baby survives, which it might do in some cases, we accept it, would it result in serious handicaps or congenital malformations or some problems that might arise later on? So we had to satisfy ourselves that it was both effective and safe, and then also available. So I went to the US that year to the American Catholic Medical Association Congress, because I saw that George Delgado was one of the main speakers talking about abortion pill reversal. I went to his talk, I met him afterwards, I read his papers. He directed me also to other papers that were showing or that were criticizing abortion pill reversal. So he was open-minded enough to point me to some of his opponents. So I read everything I could. The most convincing thing of all actually was an article in the New York Times Weekend Journal magazine, or whatever they give it, on abortion pill, and it was actually quite good for the New York Times, which isn't known for its pro-life stance. This was quite a good, at least neutral article, in that it gave both sides of the story. George Delgado was interviewed, and I think Daniel Grossman, one of the main outspoken critics of APR, was interviewed. But the person that influenced me the most, actually, and that made me determined to probably go ahead with this, was a neutral guy. Someone who called himself pro-choice, a professor of placental research, which is quite a niche area in Yale Medical School, called Professor Harvey Kleiman. And his opinion was, and he knows a little bit about placentas and progesterone and how they operate. He said that it makes absolute biological sense for progesterone to be given in this context. He said, if I had a daughter and she was pregnant and she accidentally took or was given mifepristone, I would try to give her progesterone as quickly as possible to try to reverse and undo or prevent the ongoing effect of the mifepristone. He said, and I bet you it would work. So when someone of that caliber, who doesn't have any specific ideological stance one way or another, comes out with a statement like that, that made me feel like there must be something in this. So I was determined at that stage to see could we do something about it. So you asked, why did I get involved? It was because of there was an increasing need. Claire and Jack, before that, convinced me that women were coming forward. Initially, we didn't know how many. We thought it might be a handful, maybe 2 or 3 a month, 1 or 2 a month possibly, because everyone kept saying, no, women don't change their mind. No, once they've taken the first pill, they're not going to change their mind. This doesn't happen. So we went along with that lie for quite a while. But once we set it up, and Eileen Riley was the first to do it in the UK, outside of maybe the Harley Street operation. Eileen was the first person to run the proper APR service. And then she started in April 2020. I joined her eventually in late June 2020. And then we soon realized that, calls are coming quite frequently. We're getting several a week. Some weeks we were getting 6, 7, 8 a week. Some days we were getting, particular weekends, 3 a day. That was at least 3 Saturdays where I got 3 separate calls from different parts of the country seeking help. So it was certainly, it was very rare for a week to go by without any calls. So we were getting at least 1 or 2, or usually probably on average about 4 a week over the 9 months we were operating. But sometimes even more than that. So certainly there was a need. So I responded because I saw that there was a need, and nobody else was providing trying to meet this need. I would point out that when the Catholic Medical Association agreed, yes, we're going to try and set some sort of program up here, or at least promote it, we tried to do it in the correct way. We went through all the channels. We went through the Royal Colleges. We went to the Royal College of Obstetricians, Gynecologists. We went to the Royal College of General Practitioners. We went to NHS England, because they're the controlling bodies who will largely determine what treatment should or shouldn't be used in various situations. We got no joy from them. The Royal Colleges, the two Royal Colleges sent a joint letter saying that they could not support an unlicensed treatment, because progesterone is not licensed for this indication. It's licensed for other things, but not licensed for abortion pill reversal. So they said they would not promote or support an unlicensed use of this medication. What they neglected to add, and we reminded them in a follow-up letter, was, hang on a moment, misoprostol, the second abortion pill, is not licensed for abortion. It's licensed for management of peptic ulcer disease, but it's not licensed for abortion. It's very effective in abortion. It causes, it's a prostaglandin, and it causes contraction of the womb, but it's not a licensed indication. I also pointed out at the time, because I was present, I was responsible for, my name was on the letter, that methotrexate, which is a commonly used drug in chronic inflammatory conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and maybe inflammatory bowel disease, but that's the recommended treatment for the medical management of ectopic pregnancy. And it's not licensed for that indication. And yet the Royal College of Obstetricians on their own website strongly advocate methotrexate in this situation. So it was a little bit certainly inconsistent and not hypocritical to say that that they couldn't support an unlicensed or an off-licensed medication. And that was one of the allegations then that came against me, which was very easy to overcome.
In the UK, because of yourself and another colleague, 32 babies have been saved through abortion pill reversal, which is absolutely incredible to think. And I'm sure for yourself, it's a very surreal thought that you have played a direct role in saving lives. You say that providing this treatment has been the most rewarding part of your career, and you've had a career for over 30 years, and this has been the highlight for you. This has been a huge part of your life, and you've been able as well to meet some of those babies who have been saved through yourself and your colleague providing abortion pill reversal. When that service, there was no one else in the UK providing that service apart from yourself. Would you be able to speak a little bit about the joy that has brought, and what it's like to meet the children who are here today, who their mothers had taken the first abortion pill? They would have ended up, their lives would have been ended through abortion if it was not for yourself providing that service. And I'm sure a lot of people can definitely understand how this is the most rewarding part of your whole medical career.
Yeah, it is true. It is far and away the most rewarding thing that I've ever done. And Eileen Riley, my colleague, says the same thing too. And she's been delivering babies for a long time. I think that goes down to the fact that we were helping women in a situation that they had been basically turned away from everywhere else that they tried to get help from. So we were the last stand, the last resource for them. And the depth of gratitude that they showed. Now, I didn't fully appreciate this until my case, actually, because as you mentioned, I think earlier, we managed to get several very strong witness statements in my defense when it came to like what was happening. And I wasn't allowed to be involved. I was allowed to ask permission from the girls. Was it okay for my legal representative to contact them? That was it. I wasn't allowed to get involved. So I wasn't allowed to be seen to influence or try to influence any of statements that they might make. So it was out of my hands completely. So my legal representatives interviewed 10 of the mothers, or 10 of the women, because not all of them. So we had a wide range of women that we took evidence from. We got some who already had their babies at that stage. We had some who had started the treatment and continued the treatment and were still pregnant, but hadn't delivered their babies yet. We had some women who had started the treatment, but the treatment didn't work, it failed. So there would be the 45 to 50% where it didn't work. But they were also very grateful. And we even had one woman who, after a prolonged period of counselling from me and a consultation, she decided she wasn't going to go ahead with the progesterone treatment because of circumstances in her life, that she went ahead and had the abortion. But She then contacted me a few days later to thank me for what I had done, and regretting also that she hadn't gone along with the rescue treatment. So we got a wide variety of statements from 10 different women showing the wide scale. And I didn't know until I read their statements, because I was allowed to read the statements after they had been finalised and when they were submitted to the GMC and later to the High Court. I didn't realise the depth of gratitude. I was in tears. I just didn't realise how much this meant to these women. And also, I found out later, I didn't realize, I never thought of the men, the dads involved, the fathers. I never thought that, because a lot of the women who decided not to go ahead with the treatment, it was very often because the fathers forced them. Unfortunately, the fathers didn't stand by them, or they said, I'm going to leave you if you have this baby, or I'm going to kill myself. So there's a lot of emotional blackmail involved, pressure on these women. But the dads who did stand by the women, they're real heroes in this, actually, because they could have walked away. They shouldn't have walked away, but they could have done, as many others do. And I didn't realize, I never thought of the dads until last December, when we were invited by the Christian Legal Centre, by Christian Concern, to a little Christmas party that they'd organised for their supporters and for people that they'd helped over the previous year. And they invited two of the mothers along with their babies, and the dads came along as well. And it was the first time I realised that these dads are so grateful as well, and they are even more grateful than the mums. Their little babies were alive and healthy and well, and they were looking at me as some sort of hero. But they were I should really be a small part of this. Myself and Eileen, okay, we did a very good job, and we were very compassionate, very understanding, very sympathetic. I think we gave a very good service to these ladies. But the real heroes are the women themselves, because all of them, without exception, were under some sort of pressure. Some of them were under tremendous pressure to abort. And we know that many women do abort because of coercion. But these women that decided to, no, I'm going to save this baby no matter what, they were the real heroes to make that decision. And the dads who stood by them, and not in every case, some of the women decided, with or without the dad, they were going to go ahead and save this baby. But the partners, the dads who stood alongside these women, I think they're the real heroes that we don't think of enough in this. But it was so rewarding to see the effect, the impact that it had on, and the appreciation that these women and their partners showed to us at the time, but even more so later, that when I began to realise how much it meant to them. Mm-hmm. And also the extended families. We haven't met any of the grandparents, but I've spoken on the telephone to one or two of the grandparents, and they're so grateful as well for the service that we offer to their families. So the depth of gratitude certainly brings a great amount of joy. It was also the fact that we were doing something that nobody else was prepared to do. I think that added to the element of satisfaction, or the sense that we were doing something really important here, even more so than in our normal everyday sort of NH job, which I don't want to belittle them. They're important to look after the well-being and the health and the care of people with all sorts of ailments.
Yeah, and I think what stands out, Dermot, is in some of the media coverage, the thing about the case that stands out is that I feel as though the abortion provider Mary's Troops International felt as though these women were going to come out against you, and there was a completely different narrative. But really what came through was just how complimentary the women were of you for providing this service, that they weren't going to get anywhere else. And there were so many mentions of how kind you'd been to them, the respect that you'd shown them. And in a lot of situations, it was maybe the first time in that crisis pregnancy that they were shown kindness, that they were given the encouragement to go through, that there is another option. And even I think it shows us the power of encouragement and standing by someone and really caring about these women as individuals and providing that choice. And as you say, that this is an element I think in the abortion debate we don't talk about, is the level of coercion and how women just feel so let down by society that there are no other options out there. And there's so much advocacy for abortion and agreement with it that really a lot of the time what we're telling women is that they're on their own, that society isn't going to help. And I think your story and the way you've treated those women, and the fact that they refer to you as a hero, as someone who saved the lives of those babies who spared them themselves, the women, the abortion regret, which we know is a very painful thing. And there's just a huge sense that they wanted to come out, they wanted to speak publicly. Some of them came out publicly, and there are beautiful photos of you with the babies that were saved from this. So it is incredible. And just what stands out is how complimentary they were of you when, I suppose, the abortion provider thought it was going to be a very different story, that you were going to be criticised, and that wasn't the case.
That's true. It's been well publicised in a couple of different articles, I think, both in the Mail on Sunday, that Mary Stopes in particular tried to manipulate one of the ladies, who actually, she didn't go ahead with the progesterone treatment, as it turned out. I arranged for her to have progesterone, but then she went back to Mary Stopes to tell them that she had changed her mind. They seemed to have persuaded her. I don't know exactly what happened, but for whatever reason, she then decided not to take the progesterone, but went ahead and took the second abortion pill and had the abortion. But she was one of the 1 in 17 women who developed serious complications. She developed, I can laugh about it now because it's all sorted out, but she developed a serious infection. So she had an incomplete abortion. And not because of progesterone, because she didn't take the progesterone. She told me she did, but I found out later that she didn't. When she went back to them, they persuaded her, "Oh, you mustn't do that. You must take the second abortion pill."
Mm-hmm.
She did. And then she suffered serious trouble. Now, when she had a lot of pain and fevers, she went back to Mary Stopes to tell them about this complication. And they said, "Oh, that's none of our business. Go to see your own doctor." She went to her own doctor and said, "Oh, that's nothing to do with us. Go back to Mary Stopes." So she was being swung over and back between two services that wouldn't provide her the service. So in desperation, she rang me again because I had still kept in contact with her, thinking that she had gone ahead with the rescue treatment. And I was being very nice, even if she hadn't taken, because I always leave the door open for any of the women I spoke to, even those that didn't, to take the rescue treatment. I always said, don't hesitate to contact me at any stage if you need to talk about this, or if you want me to help you with any other aspect of this. Just don't hesitate. So again, I left my contact number in every situation. So I kept in contact with her, but in desperation, she got back to me and told me about these symptoms she was having, that she couldn't get seen by anybody. So I just ensured that she got seen by her local casualty department, because that was really the only place to go in the midst of a COVID pandemic. I offered that if they didn't, because it was obvious that she needed antibiotics, but she also needed a proper assessment. She needed a scan. I think when she went to casualty first, actually, she was given painkillers and sent home. But I made her go back again. I said, you need to get a proper assessment, and it turned out she had an incomplete abortion, had to have a surgical evacuation and ongoing antibiotic treatment for some time. But she made a full recovery, but she was also very grateful. Very grateful to me that the initial consultation that I had with her, that I explained everything to her in a totally honest way. I never give them any unrealistic expectations. I always tell them you have a 50-55% chance that your baby might survive if you take the progesterone. I tell them about the side effects that they're likely to experience with the progesterone, including nausea, headache, dizziness, maybe some drowsiness sometimes. I tell them that there's a small chance that they will bleed because they're taking mifepristone, but not taking the second abortion pill might, we don't know for certain, but it might increase the risk of a heavier bleed. That's something that any of them who took the progesterone, that they were happy to take that risk. And it was very, very uncommon for that to happen. But I had to make them aware of any possible side effect or adverse effect they might experience. So she appreciated that I was totally honest with her. Mm-hmm. And so when Mary Stopes then tried to portray that this was a complication because of my involvement, and they harassed her, actually. They phoned her without any, uninvited. They tried to phone her. She blocked the medical director of Mary Stopes so that he couldn't phone her again. He then sent her an email with a letter attached to the email, which we have a copy of, and we might be looking at in more detail at a later stage. But he tried to harass her, and she saw that for what it was. And then when she was asked to eventually give her statement, she pointed both to my legal representative in her witness statement, but also to the Mail on Sunday when they interviewed her. And I think the GMC might have interviewed her at a later stage. I'm not privy to that, but I know they were planning to interview her. She said that everything that Mary Stopes had said was untrue, and she contradicted everything that they had said about her and my role in her in her complication, and she sided with everything that I had said in my witness statement, not knowing what I had said, but her report was exactly consistent with what I had reported in my witness statement. So that was pretty strong evidence in my favour. But it also showed that the desperation that Mary Stopes and the people who took the case against us were, the desperation that they had, desperately trying to find something to pin on us that would portray us in a bad light, or that they could accuse us of some misconduct, professional misconduct. But we knew that there was no evidence to support that. It's always the worry at the back of the mind that they're going to fabricate something that we won't be able to disprove. But they tried desperately. So at the end of the day, the GMC, in their final statement, said that there was no prospect that they could find evidence to support any of the allegations. It was 10 allegations in total made against me, and they had to admit that there was no prospect of finding evidence to support any of the allegations.
In terms of the fact that you challenged this decision from the General Medical Council, the ban that they imposed on you on providing that treatment, and the fact that your appeal has been successful, that sets a huge precedent. What precedent do you feel that sets, and what is next for you going forward? Will you be resuming providing this treatment for women?
I think it will have a major impact or ramifications, and not only in the UK but in other countries as well. Hopefully in Ireland, certainly in Canada, and possibly in a few other European and English-speaking countries. Because even though the initial allegations were brought against us in the UK, we know that there are colleagues who are trying to provide abortion pill reversal service in Ireland and in Canada have also come under attack from similar orchestrated groups as well, orchestrated attempts to prevent them providing this service to women. So we're hopeful that, because the GMC would command a certain degree of respect, rightly or wrongly, around the world. And if the GMC make a decision like this, which they've done, so they've withdrawn the case and they've admitted that there was no prospect of finding evidence to support any of the allegations. So if the GMC have, like an august body like the GMC, have made that decision, it will have an impact on similar medical councils and regulatory bodies in other countries, including the Irish Medical Council, including the whatever Canadian regulatory bodies that they have in the various provinces there. So I would hope it will have a major impact. This year, I would like to thank, because you said that when I decided to challenge the decision, I have to admit, when the conditions were imposed upon me, my initial reaction was there's nothing we can do. We can't win this battle. Let's just hope that the truth will eventually come out. It might take 18 months because they say they're going to investigate us, and hopefully, if they investigate us, we'll get statements from the women and my statements, and all will be okay. So that was my initial reaction. But my legal team at Christian Concern, particularly the CAO, Andrea Williams, was determined. She said, "No, we're going to fight this. We'll take it to Europe if we have to." And I said, "No, this is going to cost a lot of money." And she said, "That's what our money is for. We have to defend you in this battle." Because she believed in what we were doing. She was totally committed. Even though I've only known Andrea for less than a year, or about a year, I've been involved with her in the sort of trying to protect women from the pills by post situation in this country. And that's how I met her, through a coalition that was set up among various pro-life groups, and including the Catholic Medical Association, to try to show people the dangers associated with the pills by post. So I only know Andrea a short while, but she believed in me, and she believed in what we were doing right from the start. And she knew, with her legal background, that we can fight this, and we can, take them wherever it's necessary, whether it's to the High Court, or the Supreme Court, or to the European Court of Human Rights or Justice. So I have to pay tribute to her and her team at the Christian Legal Concern, because they had a very, very well worked out strategy as to how can we achieve the outcome that we've managed to achieve in the last 2 weeks.
So here in Ireland, the Life Institute have been working with doctors and with various pro-life groups to raise awareness of abortion pill reversal as an option for women in Ireland. They know that there are women out there who are actively looking for this service, who do not know that it exists, who are experiencing regret after taking abortion pills. And of course, we know that in Ireland we have had the similar pills by post service, and the Life Institute, of course, are calling on the Department of Health, the HSE here in Ireland, to provide this information for women and to make women aware that this service is available, that it's safe, that it's effective a lot of the time. Should they be encouraged by your victory?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're encouraged by the victory, and we're hopeful that in the UK that more and more doctors will now have the confidence to come forward and to want to be a part of this service. We're hoping that it'll also give confidence and encouragement to doctors in Ireland, North and South, and in other countries. I mentioned Canada earlier. Canada in particular is under a lot of pressure at the moment from abortion advocacy groups. Mm-hmm. So we're hoping that this outcome will encourage others to become involved. We're hoping it'll create a greater awareness among healthcare professionals, pharmacists, nurses, doctors in particular, but also among the general public, among the pro-life organisations, who a lot of members of pro-life organisations prior to this probably wouldn't have been aware of this thing called abortion pill reversal, but now they're aware of it, at least a lot more aware of it than before. So in some ways, ironically, the people who have taken the case against us have done us a favour, that they've helped us to advertise this in a far greater way than we would have been able to manage if this issue hadn't been highlighted in this way. Although I do have to say that many women have tried to avail of the service in the intervening 9 to 10 months. It hasn't been available. So a lot of babies have been lost in that time that could have been saved if the service had been allowed to continue. But hopefully we'll be able to save many babies and their mothers and their families in the future. So
going forward now, Dermot, you're able to provide this service once again, and that's you're very much going to resume that, because I know from talking to you before, there was a great sense of sadness that during that time, and because of this ban that was imposed on something that we now know is completely safe, there's no evidence to back up any of the claims that were made by abortion providers. But during that time, it was very hard for you and for the other doctor providing this service to see women come to the abortion pill reversal service hotline and the helpline and be told that there's nothing that we can do for you. So I suppose a huge priority for you going forward is to promote this service further and to let women know that it does exist, and really to pick up where you left off. So I'm sure that's a huge thing for you now.
So yes, so we hope to re-establish the service. We haven't gone straight back into it immediately. Strictly speaking, I could, right from this moment, I could do it, but there are a few minor practical details that we need to just iron out before we establish the service. We want to make it bigger and better than it was before. We're going to try and, because we don't want to leave any excuses for anybody to try and attack us again. We want it to be well publicised, upfront, well organised, organised service. But it's really important that we don't lose that human touch, that degree of compassion, sympathy that I have to say, if this was a sort of a mainstream NHS service, that might be lacking. Whereas when it's done on a voluntary basis by people who are committed to it and want to see it work, want to see women benefit from it, want to see babies survive, want to see families thrive, it's much more likely to succeed than if it's just another part of a day job that someone feels they have to do it because it's on their shift pattern. So we want it to be run by and involving people who are deeply committed to it, who want to see it work and who desperately want to help and care for women with compassion.
The pro-life movement, you can see, are just so encouraged by this victory. It's huge news. It's everywhere, and it's been so great to be able to talk to you. And we just wish you all the best for the future going forward. And it's been so interesting and very, very uplifting to hear your story and to see that, you know, the truth won out in the end with this. So thank you so much for speaking to us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Maria. I'm delighted to help in any way that I can.